to eat matzah, as I established for you, at the Moed, Bechodesh Aviv, in the moon or in the month of green ears. For in it you came out of Egypt. So there it is again. It's linking the green ears coming up early with going out. Going out. So that's why Aviv, at least in my mind, is linked with the resurrection. Next slide. Now this is a page from Gesenius, and it's Gesenius Hebrew Lexicon. This is what it looks like when you look up Aviv. It says go to Avav, which is its root. And Avav, an unused root in Hebrew. So why do they put it? Why would they put it in the Gesenius if we don't use it? Because it is used, just not in this form. It's used in the form Aviv. In Chaldee, or that's Babylonian, in the Pa'el form, that's a verb tense, Avev, to produce fruit, especially the first and early fruit. That's what the word Avav means. The first, to produce fruit, early fruit, to produce flowers. It appears in Arabic as well as Hebrew to have signified to be verdant, that means green, to germinate. What does germinate mean?
To break out?
Yeah,
to break out of
bust
the seed.
out. Right, the seed goes in, it germinates, and it comes up.
Cracks open and...
Cracks open and comes alive. See the derivatives, Aev, which means greenness, Aviv, ear of corn. Let's translate ear of corn. Not corn. Not corn. Corn is a New World product. There was no such thing as corn in the Bible. It's grain. They mean grain. But this is written by Gesenius in the 1800s. So that's why he uses old words like corn. It's not corn. Ear of grain. I consider the primary sense to have been that of putting forth. Putting forth. Protruding, germinating with impetus. What does impetus mean? Fast. To produce fast. Shooting forth like the natzal. When we change.
Right.
Remember Yeshua said,
Amen.
something doesn't come alive unless what? It first goes into the ground and dies. And then it comes to life. He's talking about his resurrection and then our resurrection. Impetus, fastness, shooting forth. German is trieben, whence ev, Junggetrieb, which means young shoots, young plants. So that it is kindred, or like family, to the roots Ava, Ya'av, and Ahav. You know what Ahav means?
Mm-hmm.
Love.
Right.
Ahava is love. Having the sense of desire. Eager pursuit. Get it! Go after it and get it. In other words, fast. To bust out and go get it.
Funny that Ahav also sounds
Bust
like
out and go get it.
English have.
Bust out and go get it. Sorry. You gotta try it. Avav. So I translate Avav as shooting forth. Germinate fast. Shooting out quickly. What number month is Aviv? First. Next slide. So we're going to go over this again. We did this last week. So if you look at Nisan on the inner calendar, which was the original calendar of creation, what month is Nisan on the inner calendar?
Seven.
Inner calendar. Inner.
First.
Seven. On the outer calendar, which is after Exodus 12, God rotates it,
One.
and 1 becomes 7, and 7 becomes 1. So that's why you could say this. You could say the Messiah will come in the first
Right.
month. Because he came the first time and died in Aviv, but he's coming again in the 7th month at Rosh Hashanah. But that calendar was rotated. So 1 becomes 7 and 7 becomes 1. So if you say Yeshua comes in the first, you're also saying he comes in the seventh. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, Aviv, meaning to get after it, quick, is the first month. Creation happened in the first month. It's like God, it's like, I was watching this program, another program about the creation of the earth. I don't know if it's true, but they kept showing the earth in its primitive form before it was the way it is now, a big rock, a dead rock. And I thought that was kind of cool because it's dead and then poof, all this stuff smashes into it and it comes to life. And I thought that was nice. It's like the resurrection of the earth. I don't know if it's true, but I liked it. So it's the same principle. It has to die, and then it comes to life. Creation was in the seventh month, but creation was in the first month. Yeshua died in the seventh month, but Yeshua died in the first month, and then came to life. Next slide. Aviv is the first month, but Aviv is the seventh month. Now, there are two passages that tell us this. One is in Hosea and one is in Joel. Both of these passages say the same thing. They say that the rain, which is the Messiah, which I'm going to show you, came in the first month. Now, if you look at your calendar here, on the left of the calendar is the rainy season, winter. Now we're going counterclockwise. We're not going clockwise. Counterclockwise, the rainy season is winter, and then you hit Aviv 1, and what happens to the prayers, the Shemona Esrei? Do you know? Something changes in the prayers when you hit Aviv 1. Do you know what it is?
18.
Say it again.
18.
Yes, but something changes in the prayer. You don't know what it is? During the 18 benedictions, the Shemona Esrei, the prayer for the resurrection changes. It's called Gevorot, powers. And the prayer goes from, blessed are you, Lord our God, who makes the wind to blow and the rain to come, rainy season. While the rainy season is going on, we're praying, who makes the wind to blow and the rain to come. Then at Aviv 1 it changes, who makes the dew to come. Who brings the dew. Dew comes up.
Oh, comes up from the ground.
Cool.
Doesn't it?
That's real cool.
It doesn't fall,
That's neat.
it comes up.
That's right.
So at Aviv 1 we change our prayer to talk about dew watering,
And
not rain watering. So we have a rainy season and we have a dry season. Winter is the rainy, spring is the dry, or summer is the dry. And that's all there is. There's rainy, there's dry. Now, Hosea 6:3 says, I wrote the whole thing up. So let us know, let us press on to know the Lord. His going forth is as certain as the sunrise, that's obvious, and he will come to us like the rain.
Right.
In other words, the rainfall is a picture of the coming of God, the coming of the Lord. Make sense?
Yeah.
So if you've seen the rain, you've seen the coming of the Lord.
Yeah.
When does the rain fall?
The winter.
When does the rain fall? Winter or summer? Winter. And the dividing line, the beginning of winter is Tishri 1, Rosh Hashanah, and the end of winter is Aviv. When this get after it month begins, the rising, the germinating month starts. So you have rain. That tells us this. The Messiah has to come. God has to come twice. And both times it has to be Tishri and Nisan. Month number
1 and 7.
or month number 7. You know how they say spring rain and what do they say? Fall rain and spring rain or something
early
like that?
rain, late
Early rain and late rain? No such thing. There's no such thing. That is bad translation. There's 3 different words used in these passages for rain. None of them mean that. One means a sprinkling rain. One means a rain that is like a downpour.
Torrent.
A torrent, right, a torrent. And one of them means a flood. None of them mean early or late. None of them. That's not even in the Bible. It's not a biblical concept. The rain is one rain, and it's in winter, but it's two rains. Because it starts in the first month and it ends in the first month. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because there's two firsts. That's why we say there's two rains. Not early and late. Now Joel 2:23, well, I'm sorry, I didn't finish Hosea 6. And he will come to us like the rain, like the heavy rains watering the earth. So we know God has to come to earth like the rain, with the rain, when the rain falls. Joel 2:23 says the same thing. So rejoice, O sons of Zion, and be glad in the Lord your God, because he has given you the, I put early rain, but it's not good translation. He has given you the rain for your vindication. And he has poured down for you the rain. And I got early and latter rain here. It's not good. You know what it says in Hebrew? Hamoreh letzadakah. You know what that means? Hamoreh is the teacher. Tzadakah, what does that mean? Tzedakah.
Righteous.
Righteousness. The teacher of righteousness. It doesn't even get close to saying early and latter rain. It says the teacher of righteousness. In the first. Barishon. When is God going to come as the teacher of righteousness? Okay, let's do it again. He has poured down for you the rain, the teacher of righteousness. When? When? What does it say?
In the winter.
In the rain.
In the
Or the first.
first. In the first. In the first. So which first is it?
Don't know.
Is it Nisan or is it Tishri?
Yes.
It's both. It's both. Now, when you're reading the Bible, if you're reading your Bible, it probably says the first month. But it doesn't say that in Hebrew. It's good translation, actually. But it doesn't say that in Hebrew. It simply says Barishon, in the first. So how can one rain and then another rain fall in the first? Because remember, there's two rains here. Be glad in the Lord your God, for he has given you the rain for your vindication. He's poured down for you one rain, and then another rain in the first. So how can there be two rains in the first? Because the calendar's been rotated. That's the only way it could happen, for there to be two first months. That's why there's two comings of Yeshua. That's why Yeshua comes in the first month. And then 7 months later, he comes in the first month.
6 months.
6 months later, thank you. He comes in the first month. First month, 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 first month. And both of them are rain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the Messiah comes like the teacher of righteousness from one festival to the next festival. First time at Pesach, second time at Tishri for the resurrection. So if you wanted to, you could say there are two resurrections. There's two, next slide. You could say there's two resurrections. Yeshua rose in the first month, yes? Aviv? Yes? All right, and we're going to rise in the next first month, Tishri. Now, I wrote out the whole description of the resurrection, at least most of it, so we're going to read this. It's long, but I don't know if every one of you has read it carefully. In 1 Corinthians 15, someone will say, how are the dead raised? I kind of like and I kind of don't like Shaul's answer, Paul's answer. And with what kind of body do they come? Here's his answer. You fool. That's his answer. You fool. Now, didn't Yeshua say if you call somebody fool, you're in danger of going to hell?
Mm-hmm.
So if you read the Bible as a book of laws, it would say that Shaul just damned himself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's not a book of laws. He's saying you're an idiot. You're not thinking clearly. And it's a good thing to say. You're foolish. You're not thinking clearly. And then he explains it. That which you sow, the seed you put in the ground, you don't sow the body that's going to be. When you pick a big old thing of wheat like that, or barley, they're this tall, right? What do you put in the ground that becomes this tall?
Just eat.
A little tiny seed of grain. Tiny little thing. And he's saying, you don't put a big stalk of grain in the ground and it produces a stalk of grain. So you can see why he's saying, you fool, you're not thinking clearly. But you put a bare grain, a little grain, perhaps of wheat or something else, but God gives it a body like God wants to give it. And to each of the seeds, a body of its own. You don't plant cucumbers and get wheat. You don't plant rye and get barley. Each thing is particular to its own seed. That's what he's saying. All flesh is not the same flesh. But there's one flesh of men, a flesh of animals, a flesh of birds, another flesh of fish. And there are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one, and the glory of the earthly is another. There's one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, another glory of the stars, because star differs from star in glory. By the way, in what is it called? They have magnitude. Magnitude stars. There's magnitude 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0 is gigantic, like Venus, and 4 is like one you can barely see, like the North Star is a magnitude 4, I believe. You can barely see it. Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying each one has its own magnitude. Each one has its own glory. What has more glory, the sun or the moon?
Sun.
The sun. Obviously, it's bright. Which one has more glory, the moon or the stars? The moon. It's brighter than the stars. So he's saying it's the same way with our resurrection. Now think about this. How much light are you going to have in your resurrection? That's what he's saying. How much light are you going to have in your resurrection? What magnitude are you going to be in the resurrection? Are you going to be great? Are you going to be middle? Are you going to be small? Are you going to be least? Are you going to be tiny? Lots of different glories. That's how it is in the resurrection of the dead, he says. It is sown a perishable, that means one that will dissolve, body. It is raised an imperishable body that won't dissolve. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It's sown in weakness. It's raised in power and light, energy. It is sown a natural body. It's raised a spiritual body. So the question, what is the resurrection going to be like? That's a stupid question. It's a stupid question. You're not thinking that, you're thinking like it's going to be something you can describe. It's not. All you can do is give it a picture. If there's a natural body, there's going to be a spiritual body. That's why it's written, the first man, Adam, became a nefesh chayai, a living soul. The last Adam, Yeshua, became a life-giving spirit. As is the earthly, so also are those who are earthy. As is the heavenly, so also are those who are heavenly. Just as we have borne the image of the earthly, Adam, we are going to bear the image of the resurrected Yeshua. The heavenly Yeshua. The resurrected Yeshua. Next slide. These are all the scriptures that have the resurrection in them. You won't recognize the resurrection in the first one. You won't recognize it. The rabbis recognize it. And they make a big deal about it. So I'm going to try to pick it apart so you can see the resurrection. Isaiah 18:3. All you inhabitants of the world and dwellers in the earth. Haaretz, in the earth, inside the earth, buried in the ground. As soon as a standard is raised on the mountain, you will see it. Who will see it? The inhabitants of the world and those who dwell in the earth. Now the rabbis read this and they saw, oh, it's the living on the earth and the dead under the earth. And we will see it. We'll see the standard raised on the mountains. And as soon as the shofar is blown, you will hear it. That's the resurrection. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Now you read it like you just read it in the words of the Bible. It doesn't show up.
It doesn't say on the earth, it says in the earth.
Yeah, when you read Bibles, it says on the earth. It doesn't say in the earth. But in Hebrew, it says in the earth. And that's why the rabbis saw. It's dead people that hear and see something.
Yeah.
All right, Isaiah 25:8. He will destroy death forever, and God will wipe away tears from all faces. If he destroys death forever, the rabbis saw that as doing what?
Resurrection.
Making the dead alive.
Natzal.
Natzal. That's what they saw. Isaiah 26:19. This one is obvious. Your dead will live, their corpses will rise. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Your dead will live, your corpses will rise. You who dwell in the dust, wake up and sing for joy. That is probably the clearest verse in the Bible about the resurrection. Clearer than anything in the New Testament. Daniel 12:2. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall wake up, some to everlasting life, and some to reproach and everlasting contempt. And I say that Isaiah 26 is clearer about the resurrection than Daniel 12. Verse 13 of Daniel 12. Very last verse of Daniel. Now go your way to the end and rest, and you shall arise and stand in your lot at the end of days.
Is that word arise natzal?
No, it's not the word natzal, it's kum. Every time it says rise or arise, it's the word kum. Now go your way, and he's talking to Daniel, so this is just to Daniel. Now go your way to the end and rest, and you shall wake up and arise and stand in your lot at the end of days. So we can say from this that Daniel's resurrected, but that one in Isaiah 27 is so much broader and clearer. All right, next slide. Now, here's what the rabbis ended up with all the scriptures and all the Hebrew and all the information in front of them. An argument is what they ended up with.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's fantastic that there was an argument. Because what they ended up with was one group saying, the resurrection happens at Aviv. And the other group says, no, the resurrection happens in Tishri. They're both right. One's a picture and one's reality. One's a picture, a prophecy, and one is what's going to happen in reality. Rabbi Eliezer says, in Tishri, the world was created. In Tishri, the patriarchs were born. In Tishri, the patriarchs died. On Pesach, Isaac was born. But on Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah were remembered by God and conceived. On Rosh Hashanah, Yosef came out from prison. Now, all the things that they're describing are resurrections. Dead and living. That's why he's saying this. On Rosh Hashanah, our forefathers' slavery in Egypt stopped. That, in other words, they went free. In Nisan, the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt, and in Tishri, in the future, the Jewish people will be redeemed in the final redemption with the coming of the Messiah. It happens in Tishri. That's the resurrection. I mean, no doubt about it. The other guys go, no, there is a doubt about it. They said. Rabbi Yehoshua says, no, that's not true. In Nisan, the world was created. In the Nisan, the patriarchs were born. In Nisan, the patriarchs died. On Pesach, Isaac was born. That's true. On Rosh Hashanah, it's true. Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah were remembered by God and conceived sons. On Rosh Hashanah, yes, Yosef came out of prison. On Rosh Hashanah, our forefathers' slavery did end in Egypt. But in Nisan, the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt. And in Nisan, in the future, the Jewish people were redeemed in the final redemption. He's right.
So which calendar?
Because it was a picture. But he's wrong that in the final days it will happen in Nisan. It happened as a picture in Nisan. The reality is going to be at Rosh Hashanah. So resurrection comes in the first either way, right? And the Messiah comes in the first either way.
Right.
Next slide. Here's a couple pictures of the resurrection. Joshua chapter 5. These aren't verses about the resurrection. These are pictures. Passages that are pictures of the resurrection. Sorry, Joshua chapter 5. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make for yourselves flint knives and circumcise again the sons of Israel the second time." So Yehoshua made himself flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeat Ha'aralot. And this is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Egypt, who were males, all the men of war, died. They're in the ground. So what has to happen?
They gotta rise.
Resurrection has to show up, and it does. After they came out of Egypt. For all the people who came out were circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness along the way as they came out of Egypt had not been circumcised. Now the doctrine in ancient Israel was this. A Gentile comes to the God of Israel to know God and is circumcised, a male. And when they're circumcised, they become molad sheni, born again. They become alive. And they're a different person. They're a different baby. Now they knew this was only a picture. They didn't really think just because they, circumcise a person, they become somebody else. But spiritually, they did and do to this day. Verse 6, for the sons of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all that nation, all those people, died. And then the new generation comes. Verse 8. Now it came about when they had finished circumcising all the nation that they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed. 3 days. Then the Lord said to Yehoshua, "Today I've rolled away this reproach." Verse 10. The sons of Israel camped at Gilgal. They observed what? You're not looking at the Bible. They observed what? What do you think they observed? You don't have your Bibles in front of you, so there's no way you can know.
Yeah,
You gotta guess.
What verse you in?
In verse 10. Sorry. Yeah, 10. Verse 10. It's not here.
Oh, okay.
Paso.
It's not here. What did they observe?
Paso.
Pesach.
It's not.
Right after they were circumcised, because the generation died, they circumcised, they became a different baby, and they observed Passover. In the month of Nisan, month of Aviv, the month of germinating, going now, coming to life. There's resurrection.
Huh.
On the very day after Pesach, on that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, and the manna stopped. All right, let's go to Judges 6. Verse 7. It came about when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord on account of Midian that the Lord sent a prophet. His name was Gideon. Verse 11. The angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak that was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress. So this angel shows up and basically says, your child is going to lead Israel. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Then in verse 19, Gideon went in and prepared a kid and matzah from an ephah of flour. So what time of year is it?
It's gotta be Pesach.
What time of year is it? What
Aviv.
time of year is it?
Aviv.
It's Aviv, it's Nisan, it's Pesach. Because he prepares matzah. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot and brought them out under the oak and presented them to an angel to eat. All right? Chapter 7. Now, chapter 7, Gideon is going to redeem Israel. He's going to fight for Israel. This is one of my favorite pictures in the whole Bible. It's very weird. Gideon and all the people who were with him rose early. What does rose early mean? What is rose early?
Yeah.
Rose early. What does that mean?
First resurrection.
Resurrection. Gideon and the men who were with him rose early. They resurrected. Verse 2, the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many. So God starts whittling them down to 300 men. By the way, the army that they're going to fight is about 1 million men. And God is going to deliver them with 300 people. That's it. Verse 9. The same night, verse 9. Now the same night it came about that the Lord said to him, get up, arise, and then go down. What is that a picture of? Arise and go down. What is that a picture of? Resurrection and then the return of God, of Yeshua. Get up, resurrect, and then go down and fight. So it's a picture of the coming of the Messiah. Let's go to verse 19. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. When they had just posted the watch, and they blew the shofars and smashed the pitchers that were in their hands. When the 3 companies blew the shofars and broke the pitchers, they held the torches in their left hand and the shofar in their right for blowing. Now, let me tell you how weird this is. God tells Gideon to get 300 pitchers, vessels of clay, and put torches inside them, lit torches. And then blow the shofar, and smash the pitcher. How are you going to smash a pitcher if you're blowing the shofar? And then hold the torch that's inside.
Smash it with the shofar.
Smash it with the shofar. I think what had to happen was each man had a man. I think, I don't know. And one guy holds the pitcher, and the other guy smashes it. He holds the torch, and the other guy blows the shofar, and then he gives him the torch. I don't know how else to do it, because you can't smash a pot and instantly grab the torch that's in it. But that's somehow what happened. I don't know how. So he says, blow the shofar. Smash the pot. The lit torch shows up, and then they win. They win the battle. So what's that a picture of?
Wow.
What is the clay pot or clay vessel a picture of?
Body.
Our physical body. And the light that's inside of it
Right.
is the glory that shows up when we resurrect.
Right.
At the blowing of the shofar.
Right.
So there's going to be a blowing of the shofar. The pots are smashed. The light shows up inside of it.
Right.
Because it doesn't have that cask anymore. That's a picture of the resurrection.
Sure.
When did this happen?
Yeah.
When did this happen?
Well, early.
In Nisan, because he offered matzah. What time of day or night did it happen? Do you remember what it said?
Oh, it says
At
midnight.
the beginning of the middle watch
It says
at
midnight.
night. The beginning of the middle watch at night. Night is divided right in half.
Right.
Laila is divided right in half with midnight. Midnight is the beginning of the middle watch. You have 4 watches at night. Well, the middle watch means midnight. And midnight is the very beginning of the middle watch. Does that make sense? So what time did they smash the pots, blow the shofar, and the resurrection happens?
Midnight.
At midnight. Now that's a biblical principle. There's lots of scriptures that say the resurrection happens at midnight. And that's what I've got written for you here. Exodus 12:29, Judges 16:3, Job 34:20, Psalm 119. These are all passages that prove that the resurrection happens at midnight. Exodus 12:29. What time did God leap over the houses and save Israel?
I'm going to guess midnight.
Okay, let me ask you this. What time did the death angel go creeping around through the city and kill everybody? Wrong. There was no death angel. That's from the movie.
Oh.
Movies. Plural movies. They all have that for some reason. Like this mist comes and it goes through the city. Man, that's not true. It says God leapt like a deer over the houses. Like a lamb, like a little lamb. Leaping over the houses. That's what he did. And that happened, it says in the scriptures, at midnight. Exodus 12:29. At midnight the Lord struck the firstborn of Egypt. Now Judges 16:3, this is an amazing passage. Let's go to Judges 16. This is about Shimshon, Samson. Samson went to Uzzah and saw a whore there and went into her. And then in verse 3, Shimshon lay until midnight. And at midnight he, what does it say?
Rose.
He rose. At midnight he rose. That's all you need. At midnight he rose. And he took hold of the doors of the city gate. That weighs tons. Tons. The doors of the city, this is a gate. This room, this is about the size of a city gate, a big city gate. There were smaller ones, but this is the size of an average city gate. A gate is not a swinging door. That's the doors of the gates. He took the doors of those gates, which are enormous. 15 feet tall, 10 foot wide, each of them, 20 foot wide opening with hinges about a foot and a half made out of iron, and there's about 10 on each side, and then the posts that hold them, which are like 12 by 12s, and the lintel, which is like a 12 by 12. This thing weighs tons. And he took hold of the doors of the city gate and the two posts and pulled them up along with the bars, these heavy steel, iron bars. Then he put them on his shoulders and carried them up to the top of the mountain opposite Hebron. You know what Hebron is? What is a picture of? Who was buried in Hebron?
Forget.
Abraham, Sarah, Isaac,
The cave. Yeah.
Rebecca,
Everybody but
Jacob,
Rachel.
Leah,
But Rachel.
not Rachel. Rachel was
Everybody but
Rachel. Everybody but Rachel. 6 people were buried. 6 of our fathers and mothers were buried in Hebron. So what do you think Hebron is a picture of?
6 days. Yeah, resurrection.
Heaven. Heaven. Hebron is a picture of heaven. That's what all the rabbis say. That's why Jews want to live in Hebron. Hebron. That's why the Arabs want to destroy the Jews from Hebron. Because we have all of our fathers and mothers buried there, except for 1 or 2. Joseph is in Shechem, and Rebecca, no, Rachel, yeah, you're right. Rachel is in Bethlehem. And that's a picture of heaven. That's where we go to rest with our fathers, is heaven. So he takes these tons of stuff, puts it on his shoulders. Don't ask me how. That's crazy. Puts it on his shoulders and brings it up to the top of a mountain opposite Hebron. So what do you think that's a picture of? That's a picture of Yeshua rising, all the believers rising at midnight on Yeshua's shoulders, and he takes us to heaven at midnight. I absolutely love this verse. I won't even talk about gates. That's another Rosh Hashanah resurrection concept, which just adds to it. I'm not going to talk about it right now. Job 34:20. At midnight, people are shaken and removed. That's the natzal. At midnight, people are shaken. Remember the pots? Smash the pot and the light shows up. People are shaken and taken away, removed. Mighty, the mighty are taken away without a hand. Without a hand. In other words, no human being is going to take them away.
Right.
Who's going to take them away? The Holy Spirit. That's the resurrection. Psalm 119:62. Simple, beautiful little phrase. At midnight I shall arise.
Mm-hmm.
I shall arise is the resurrection. When does it happen? Midnight.
Midnight.
It's that simple. At midnight I shall arise. Matthew 25:5. The bridegroom was delaying. At midnight a shout. Behold, the bridegroom comes! Come out to meet him. That's the resurrection. Even the church acknowledges that as being what they call the rapture, what we call the resurrection. Even the church acknowledges that one. And what time does the shout happen to come out and meet him? At midnight. Acts 20. This is interesting. I just saw this one yesterday. Acts 20. This is really interesting. This is
That
about
is
Havdalah.
That is
Havdalah is
really
the end of Shabbat. In chapter 20, it's talking about Paul teaching at a Havdalah service at the end of Shabbat. Verse 7. On the first day of the week, what day is that?
Day 1, Sunday.
Day what? What day? Sunday. On the first day of the week, on Sunday, when we were gathered together, this is not Sunday morning service. This is Saturday night. What time does the first day of the week start?
Sundown.
Sundown, Saturday night. That's Havdalah. That's what Havdalah is. It's the end of Shabbat.
separation.
So they're not meeting for a Sunday morning service.
That's right.
We'll say Havdalah, when we were gathered together to break bread, Shaul began talking to them. Now I'm going to prove to you it's not a Sunday morning service. Intending to depart the next day. And he prolonged his message until midnight. So you're telling me he started a service in the morning and spoke till midnight? I don't believe it. I think it's ridiculous. It's 6 o'clock probably. It's around 6 o'clock p.m. Saturday night, and they have the service and they do the rituals, and then he starts speaking. So probably 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He spoke for 5 hours. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But the church wants you to believe that he spoke for 18 hours. That's absurd.
It took turns.
There were many lamps in the upper
Wasn't
room
there.
where we were gathered together. And there was a certain young man named Eutychus sitting on the windowsill. And, Paul's teaching, and so he falls asleep. So it's not just me. People fell asleep while Shaul was teaching too. Sinking into a deep sleep, and as Shaul kept on talking, he was overcome by sleep, and he fell down from the 3rd floor and was picked up dead. It says that Shaul spoke till what time?
Midnight.
Well, what stopped him from speaking?
This guy
Dude guy falls out of the window and
He
dies.
would have kept going.
So, what time did Eutychus die? Midnight. Shaul went down, fell on top of him, and after embracing him, he said, "Hey guys, don't worry, he's alive." It says he was
It
dead.
looks like mouth to mouth to me.
Well, no, it's not. He was dead. And Shaul falls on him and prays, and what happens? What happens? He was resurrected. He's resurrected. At what time?
Midnight.
That's why this story's in the Bible. It's a picture of resurrection at midnight. That's why it's here. All right, next slide. Let's talk about the names of the months, the first month. Aviv was later called Nisan. And when I say later, I mean in the Persian period, because it's in Nehemiah chapter 2 and Esther chapter 3 when it's called Nisan. Now, that's hundreds of years after Moses. But it has these two names. It has Aviv, which means, rise, grow fast, and Nisan. So Nisan must mean something similar to Aviv. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's got to mean something similar. Now, it says that it's from the word Nitzan. Sounds almost the same. Nitzan or Nitzan. the month of flowers. And remember, we saw in Avav, remember what it said that it meant to germinate or flowers, the month of flowers? Remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So Avav means month of flowers, and Nitz is a flower. So it's growing things, spring. So that's similar. And the 2 months of what we call Tishri never shows up in the Bible. Not once. The word Tishri never shows up in the Bible. Ever. But there is a word that shows up in the Bible that I found, that nobody told me, that could be the root of it. It could be. And it's ta'asor, which it says it's an unused root. Ta'asor, tishri, tishar, T-S-R are the 3-letter root.
Right.
Tasor, tishri. So it could be from ta'asor, which means erectness or tallness. Now, they say that it's from the Akkadian tasritu, which means beginning, which is possible. From suru, to begin. Possible. I don't know. All I know is it never shows up in the Bible. So it could be this Hebrew word that is in the Bible, ta'asor, which means erectness and tallness. And the reason I say it is this. Aviv and Nisan have similar meanings, yes?
Yes.
So Tishri and Etanim, which is the other word for the 7th month, must have similar meanings. Gotta be. The only word for the 7th month in the Bible is Etanim. Etanim, which means donkeys, basically. Basically. But donkeys are called donkeys for a reason. Now it's from the Hebrew etan, which is donkey, but it's only donkey because of what a donkey is. A donkey is strong, stubborn. Not stubborn in a bad way. Stubborn as constancy. Like you always know that they're going to go very slow at first. You know they're going to be stubborn about it. You know that they're going to be a pack animal that is dependable. And you can depend on them to be stubborn. Which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But, so they translate it as constancy. In other words, always like that. Always like that. Which they say is perennial. Perennial means always, every year. The permanent brooks, they're always there. The permanent water sources are always there. Why would they name the 7th month permanent water courses? That doesn't even make sense. But it does make sense to call it permanent. Constancy. It's always there. It's strong. It's mighty. It's always there. And so, Etanim is sometimes, and I want to say this clearly, sometimes called the great ones, the mighty ones. Not donkeys, the mighty ones. They're constant. They're always there. They're dependable. That's why I think it might be that it's from the root ta'asor, erectness, tallness, solid. Like the word yashar, which means upright. And so they translate it sometimes mighty ones. So that one is kind of questionable, but I think personally that Tishri and Etanim are similar meanings. You can believe that or not believe that. But Nisan and Aviv are certainly similar meanings. So what we have is this. We have the 1st month and the 7th month is the 1st month and the 7th month is the 1st month and the 7th month. Tishri equals Aviv. Aviv equals Etanim. Etanim equals Nisan. Nisan equals Tishri. Tishri equals Aviv. They're interchangeable, so to speak. Let's go to the next slide. 1 Corinthians 15:20 and 23 says this. But now Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits. It doesn't say the second fruits, third fruits, eighth
Right.
fruits, ninth fruits.
That's
It
right.
says what?
First.
First.
The
Or is it
green.
seventh? The first fruits of those who are asleep, but each in his own order. Messiah, the first fruits, and after that, Messiah's at his coming. And this is talking about the resurrection. Messiah rose, he resurrected as what? As what?
First fruit.
First fruits. So therefore we will rise, theoretically,
Right.
in another first, which is the seventh, which is the first, which is the seventh, which is the first. All right, so here's how it worked the week of the Passover week, or the Passion of the Christ. So they have Yeshua dying on Friday, right? Good Friday? There's no way. He died on Thursday.
Wrong.
So here's the week. Now we have three things that fall during this week. We have Pesach, Passover. We have Hag HaMatzah, the first day of Hag HaMatzah, which is a festival. Shabbaton, a high day. Then we have a regular Shabbat. Sorry, we have four things.
Yeah.
Then we have Bikurim, or first fruits. All 4 days fall in this time frame of Yeshua's death. And all 4 days teach about Yeshua's death, his burial, and his resurrection. In order. So, he dies on Thursday, the 14th, which is what festival?
Pesach.
Pesach. That's when the lamb is killed. That night begins Hag HaMatzah. So Yeshua had to be in the ground before that sun went down, and Hag HaMatzah starts. And that's what happened. They wrapped him in linen wrappings, plural, kind of like a mummy. There was a napkin, face napkin, that Yeshua, when he busted out of that cast of linen strips dipped in myrrh and aloes that hardened into a crust. When he busted out of that, he took the napkin that was on his head and set it aside separately. Separately. He took that and set it aside. Why? So they could see inside the cast and they could see that Yeshua resurrected.
Right.
So Hag HaMatzah, he's laid in the ground at about, between 3 and 6. He died at 3. He had to be in the ground by 6. So you'll see on the graph here that right when Hag HaMatzah starts, 6 p.m., Friday the 15th, he's already in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes the next day, Shabbat, regular weekly Shabbat. He's in the ground still. And then comes Sunday, the first day of the week, which is first fruits. Now, this is a big, big thing. And I cannot explain it here because there's no time. But first fruits is the first Sunday after Passover. The first Sunday after Passover. That's Bikurim. Bikurim, or first fruits, is the first Sunday after Passover. That's when Yeshua rose from the dead. Now, if you look on the bottom, I've got that bracket with 3 days and 3 nights. It's not 3 full days, but it is 3 full nights. Yeshua said the Son of Man has to be killed, laid in the ground, just like Jonah in the belly of the big fish, for 3 days and 3 nights.
Right.
It is 3 full nights, but it's not 3 full days. But it is part of Thursday day, Friday day, Saturday day, and then just a little bit of Sunday day. So we got 3 days, 3 nights. So he rose by 6 a.m. on Bikurim. By 6 a.m., he's already up out of the ground. But what time do you think he really rose? Yes, you do. You don't shake your don't shrug your shoulders like you don't know. You do know.
Midnight.
Right, of course. At midnight I shall rise. So he spent about 6 hours puttering around he had to take the face cloth off the cast and had to go talk to the angels. He had to present himself to hell and say ah. He had to go to heaven and say, here we go, baby, I'm here. And he came and he did what he had to do, and he rose physically. He showed up in front of people. They didn't see him rise, did they?
No.
Nobody saw him rise.
No.
So we don't know what time he rose,
No.
except we do know what time he rose, because of all the scriptures that say at midnight the resurrection happened. Look, if our resurrection is going to happen at midnight, I guarantee you, because he's the first fruits of the resurrection, he modeled it first.
Sure.
So he rose at midnight. I can say with pretty much authority that's true. He rose at midnight.
Yeah,
So-
it's logical.
You got 3 days, you got 3 nights. Next slide. So because Yeshua resurrected, we're going to be like him. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. Let me say it this way. I know we want to be like Yeshua, right? That's why we're studying this stuff. We want to be like Yeshua. We can't. We can't. But we can. And the whole purpose of the resurrection is to smash that vessel to death so that the light busts out and it looks like God. A torch. A lapid. A torch. A light. That's the whole purpose of the resurrection. To smash the vessel and turn it into light. So Psalm 17:15. I love this verse. As for me, I will see your face in righteousness. I will see your face in righteousness. I will be satisfied when I wake up and with beholding your likeness. In other words, I will be in your likeness.
Right.
I'll be satisfied with your likeness. I'm going to have his likeness. Now, the closest we can get to that on this earth is Judaism. That's the closest we can get. If we're doing Judaism, we'll be reflecting God's personality, likeness, attitude, thoughts, feelings, perceptions for a while, for a little bit, and then go back to being a clay vessel. And then we go back to having his likeness. Then we go back to being clay. Then we turn into a torch. Then we go back to being clay. Then we become malapi. And then we go back to being clay. Over and over again, every day. So there's nothing to attain. There is nothing to attain. There is just getting a little bit more every day like God by doing and studying Judaism. That's its purpose. But when natzal, the yanking up, the resurrection occurs when mechaya hametim, the making alive of the dead happens, we will be satisfied, hopefully, you'll be satisfied, and I will, with having his likeness. Do you know what that means? That means we're going to be a little God. We're going to be like God. We're going to be a little picture of God. As close as we can possibly get. Not like the Buddhists say, we're going to be absorbed into God and be one with God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going to say we are going to be like a little chunk off the bread. All the time. Like you got God, it's bread, pull a little piece off, that's you. And you always look and smell and taste and are part of that loaf. It's the best thing that we can possibly hope for. And that's going to happen at the beginning of the kingdom. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God.
Right.
So we have to be changed in order to go into the kingdom.
The light beams.
We have to be, what'd you say, light beings, beings of light. That's right, we've got to be lapidotes, torches, in order to go into the kingdom. That's the purpose of the resurrection. That's why it happens in the first month. The 7th month. The first month. The 7th. The 1st, the 7th month. That's why. Because that's when the kingdom starts. at the first month, seventh month, Tishri. Let's pray. Father, thank you that we have the promise of the resurrection, and that we are going to be satisfied with your likeness, your image, your picture, but not picture, the reality, but your image. We're going to be a little image of you. Or maybe a big image of you. I don't know. But we're certainly going to be part of you. And I thank you, Father, that you promised the Messiah to come twice. In the first, as the rain, and I ask that you would, by your Spirit, pour out your Spirit of understanding on your body. In the name of Yeshua.